Hi, I'm Shalane from TSC Tuition, and today I'll be talking about dictionaries, specifically paper dictionaries. My recommendation as an English tutor is that students use a paper dictionary instead of an electronic one. And the reason for that is primarily because I think, well, one, if you're using a paper dictionary, you have to think about the word just a little bit longer because you have to flip through the dictionary thinking about how the word is spelled, where the word sits alphabetically with, all the other words that are in the dictionary. And two, you can't use an electronic dictionary in your tests or in your SACs or in your exam. And I think it's highly unlikely that that rule is going to change over the next couple of years. So my recommendation is that students really learn to use a dictionary effectively. Because you don't want to be sitting down in your exam going, okay, well, how do I spell, S, P. And you're just wasting time when you could be spending that time doing something so much more productive in your exam, like writing your essay. So with that being said, the other thing is that the longer you think about a word, the more likely you're going to remember it for longer. Whereas if you just, type it into your electronic dictionary or type it on your phone or whatever it is that you're using instead of a paper dictionary, the word only stays in your mind for about 5 seconds, right? Or however many seconds it takes to type in to the keyboard. And then you read it, and then you close the browser, and then that's it. You forget. Next time you're going to have to look it up again. So whereas if you use a paper dictionary, you really have to think about the word quite hard and for quite a long period of time compared to an electronic dictionary. So that's why I suggest a paper dictionary for students who are learning English or studying English. Now, that being said, there are a variety of dictionaries out there, and today I'm only going to talk about dictionaries, not thesaurus, not anything else, just dictionaries. And what you'll notice if you ever walk into a bookshop is that there are a million of them. There are different publishers, there are different kinds of dictionaries, there are different sizes of dictionaries. So today I'll just be going through some basic differences and also how to use one effectively. So first of all, you have some really junior dictionaries. So I've got one here, it's quite old. It's a dictionary for young Australians. Obviously it is targeted at an Australian English learner, and with a dictionary like this, you'll see that it's laid out fairly simply. It has only numbers or numbered definitions if there's more than one, and the definitions are quite short, and they do try to use fairly simple language to talk about the words. And if you use something like nowadays, actually, I did say this is quite old, but nowadays if you get a new dictionary for young Australians or for young learners, they often separate it into age groups. So a really common division is a dictionary for, say, ages between, say, 5 to 10, something like that, and then onwards, or even smaller, like 4 to 7, 8 to 10, something like that. And that could be quite helpful in determining whether or not a dictionary is useful for you, because the selection of words also differ. So in a dictionary like this one, the number of words are going to be far fewer than the number of words in a dictionary like this one. Just the size of it alone kind of shows you. So here we're mainly dealing with things like concrete nouns, some really common abstract nouns, fairly common verbs, whereas with something like this one, we're talking about language that's a little bit more difficult that I probably wouldn't expect your average year 5, grade 5 student to know. And then, of course, you get a slightly more advanced one like this one. This is the Macquarie. It's an Australian publisher. I think it's an Australian publisher. And again, and if you compare the definitions here, immediately we can see that the definitions are much longer, and you also get a pronunciation guide. So for example here we've got icon, and it actually says say Y-KON. So that helps you with pronouncing some of the more difficult words. I really like the Macquarie for this reason, whereas if you get something like the Oxford is famous for using the IPA as a pronunciation guide. And all that means is they use a very special alphabet to translate each individual sound in English. So you probably can't see it, but it does look something a little bit like English, but not quite like English. So if you're looking for a pronunciation guide, you actually have to flip to the front here to see what each of the individual symbols sound like, and then, you know, there's lots of flipping back and forth. Unless you memorize it, but, you know, not a lot of students like to memorize things like this. And I don't think it's terribly necessary either for a student to do that. So the Oxfords are probably not quite useful in terms of pronunciation. The Macquarie would be far more useful if you're really looking for a pronunciation guide, if you struggle with pronouncing English words the Australian way, that is, the Australian way. Obviously, the Australian accent is different to a lot of other accents, so the pronunciation guide is strictly for an Australian accent. Now, of course, you do get, from that up, you get something like this, the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary of Current English. It's probably not quite current anymore, as you can see it's quite old, but you also can get something like this, which is the Australian Schoolmate Dictionary. And I really quite enjoy dictionaries like this because it's quite skinny. It's about an A4 size, which means that you can fit it in with all your other books and it won't be like terribly thick and awkward to carry. And they also usually come with these binder holes. So it's terribly useful if you know that you're only going to be using it in English, so you just stick it in your English folder and off you go and you never have to worry about it. Something like this though, the print is quite small, which I don't know why, but some students struggle with it. Yep, but the definitions again are a step harder than this, and you probably also get a wider range of words from your junior or young student dictionary. So that's your usual sort of school learner's dictionary, and then you get the really big one, like this one. This one's the full Oxford English Dictionary, and I know it says new, but I did get it quite a few years ago, so it's not quite so new anymore. But with something like this, you get quite a lot of information, and what I personally really enjoy is that it also tells me the origins of the words, which again, not that relevant for your usual high school student, but that's just the nerd in me that really enjoys knowing where words come from. And with something like this, you also get, sometimes you get related words like a thesaurus, or, you know, see also, and then you get another word that you could also look up. You also get little sort of usage notes like that. But again, it's not, you know, it's quite heavy. So it's not that useful for a lot of students who are carrying dictionaries around, and I wouldn't suggest that your high school student gets something like this because you can't take it to school, and what's the point if you can't take it to school? Okay, so let's talk about, I'm going to use this one because it's lighter. Let's talk about how to use a dictionary. First of all, a dictionary is arranged alphabetically. It means A is at the start, and all the words that start with Z are at the end. And that applies for all the words within, you know, the group of words that start with A. Now, this means you're going to have to know your alphabet quite well, okay? But most dictionaries also have a very handy guide, and this one here, if you have a look at it, this word up here is the first word on the list, the first full entry. And then this word here is, again, the first full entry on this column. So that means if you know your alphabet quite well, you know exactly what the word it is that you're looking for. You know the word that you're looking for. You can use this as a guide. So for example, I've got inedible and infirm here. Let's say I'm looking at the word information, right? I'm looking for the word information. I-N, I'm right. E, I know F for in information, I'm looking for I-N-F. F is after E, so that means it's got to be after the first post or the first entry of this column. So then I can look at this column, which is infirm, and I've got I-N-F. Excellent, exactly what I'm looking for information, I-N-F. The next letter for information is O. And here, the next letter after F is R. R is after O, so that means it can't be in this column because R is after O. So that means it must be somewhere down the bottom of the column before. Okay. Now, this dictionary is probably not your usual layout because it's got the words up the top. Usually what you get is something like this, where you get a word slash another word. The word before the slash is the first word on the page. The word after the slash is the last word on the page. So that way you can determine, provided that you know your alphabet quite well, that way you can determine whether the word you want is on this page or the next or the one before. Now also, if we're looking at a dictionary, you'll notice that after the word you usually get a little letter here, and usually it's N, V, ADV, ADJ, or probably a preposition is the next one, PRE or PREP. All that means is it tells you what kind of word this particular word is. And that's quite helpful. I'll probably talk about this in another video, but that's quite helpful if you know your grammar well enough, because then it tells you how to use the word in a sentence. It doesn't tell you exactly how to use a word, but you should have a fairly good idea of, what you're looking for. And then also within the entry at the end, it should also tell you any other forms the word has. Now, that only applies if you're looking at something like a schoolmates or an advanced dictionary and above. In something like a junior dictionary, you won't get that. It's not expected that students know different forms of a word at that sort of primary level. And nowadays, grammar education sort of doesn't extend to that level either. So I wouldn't expect a primary school student to know what a noun is, what a verb is. Some students do, and that's great, but not every school teaches that, not every teacher teaches that. So a lot of these junior dictionaries you don't get. Oh no, this one does, but this one shouldn't. Yes, so a really young one doesn't have that, but this one does, which is why I quite like this one actually. I use it with a lot of my EAL students or English as an additional language students, because it's got a good balance of grammar, and it's also got some really simple definitions, and it's a sizable sort of collection of words as well. Now, if you get really stuck on the grammar, a lot of the times you'll get... it's coming apart. A lot of the times you'll get abbreviations, sort of like an index up the front. You also get some grammar tips and how to use a dictionary. So if you're ever at a loss on how to use a dictionary, have a look and see if you've got any sort of guides up at the front. Like, I think even this one does. Here we go. How to use this dictionary. So that's always a good idea as well. But most dictionaries, all dictionaries are laid out in the same way. It's alphabetical order, and they'll always have first and last or first words up the top here. So that helps you look for the word that you're looking up. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll probably make a video about parts of speech. That's probably a good idea, just covering your usual nouns, adverbs, verbs, adjectives. Like, I think those 4 would be good. But yeah, let me know what you think. Please subscribe. I'll try and make regular videos. I also do post quite often on the blog, or I'm trying to post quite often on the blog, on the website, so check that out too. And yeah, contact if you'd like personal or individual English help. Thanks for watching.